Dion referred to him as the imposter knight. Gray tells him to shut his mouth, Dion madman of the royal family. Gray knew he was up to no good, so he suggested that he keep those schemes of his to himself. Dion declared that he would take that as a compliment and suggested they catch up on life next time. That's when he remembered that the young lady was still waiting for him to return. As she waited, she became increasingly impatient. Wondering where he had gone, Dion approached and apologized to her. With an upset expression, she questioned what took him so long. But before her was a beautiful sight. His gorgeous blonde hair was tousled, and he looked magnificent. She noticed something and told him to kneel down a bit. He did as he was told. She brushed his hair back and questioned what had happened to his face, as there was a slight cut on his cheek. Meanwhile, Gray was burning with rage as he spied from behind an alleyway. Dion declared that he had just met a puppy that steals treats. He kissed the young lady's hand and questioned if she was worried about him. How can you be so cute? This made her feel goosebumps. Rubbing her cheeks, he declared that instead of worrying about him, she should worry about her appearance. While doing this, he infuriated John, who was simmering with resentment. However, Dion found the way he looked strangely amusing. Noticing that it was getting late, she suggested they go back home and take care of any important matters they had for tomorrow. Meanwhile, Penny was running into an alleyway at full speed. She stopped right at the entrance to catch her breath. It was quite embarrassing for her. She should have been standing on the other side, but Emmy was just too beautiful. Her white hair was like snow, and her beautiful eyes made her irresistible. At this rate, how was she going to complete the task that her father had given her? From behind her, there was movement as a strange creature approached her. She turned around, wondering what it could be, but when she saw it, she turned pale, wondering what on earth this thing was. Her scream filled the air, but it was too late. In the next scene, Penny's father was informed that after Penny met the young lady of Morwindukel, his daughter Penny had disappeared. There was a smile on his face. Surprisingly, he was quite proud of his precious daughter for giving him the opportunity to approach Miss Emmy Morwin this soon. He wondered when he should visit them so they could repay their debt. Cutting late into the night, the stars shimmered beautifully and the moon was full. Amy wondered what happened to her original world and who was in charge of her manual now. She looked down and thought, if she jumped from here, would she go home? She began crawling on top of the balcony, believing that this was worth a try. It also made sense that she didn't belong here anyway. Suddenly, her brother grabbed her, saving her just moments away from falling. With a worried expression, he told her that it was dangerous there, and she needed to get down. She looked at him in surprise, but ultimately agreed. The two sat together outside the balcony, and Amy questioned if Ellie was mad. He told her that he was. Her actions could have been disastrous. He declared that if he hadn't arrived on time, who knows what might have happened. She contemplated for a few moments and then apologized, declaring that she wouldn't do anything dangerous again. She really wished that he wouldn't grip her hand so tightly when his was trembling so much. After all, she wasn't a real person he should be treasuring. The next day, Dion opened the curtain and declared with a smile, "It's time to wake up, young miss. You have to meet His Majesty today." However, she remained curled up in bed, hugging her pillow. She opened one eye and inquired what he meant by His Majesty. Suddenly, she felt great turbulence jogging her out of bed. Dion questioned if Master Ellie hadn't informed her last night. She remembered that last night he was probably busy preventing her from jumping to her next life, so he most likely forgot. Her father had ordered that a bodyguard closer to her age accompany her to the palace, so there was no need to be anxious. This person was waiting for her outside, so she needed to look a bit more presentable, despite the fact that she still looked adorable. Upon exiting her room, she felt a bit tired and disheveled, but upon seeing a boy, who was supposed to be her bodyguard that Dion had mentioned, it was quite obvious that he was quite handsome. For a few moments, she stared at him in her beautiful green dress. He knelt down and declared that he was her personal bodyguard, Gray. She asked him to raise his head. He was another character who wouldn't appear in her manual. Gray, as loyal as he was, declared that he awaited her orders. When he opened his eyes, she finally noticed that his eyes were heterochromatic. They looked really nice. Meanwhile, she felt something watching her. A strange sensation sent goosebumps up her spine, and looking up outside the window, she sensed that someone with ill intentions was observing her. At the same time, in another country in the kingdom of Huawei, a beautiful girl with purple eyes cut his hair, believing that even with her new haircut he still looked beautiful. Her name was Qianqiui. She was on his way to the Kapper Empire, but she wasn't going on vacation. She had a mission. The goal of this mission was to capture a monster that had escaped their borders. In the next scene, we see her on a ship as she looks at her target, which is a Kapelian bird at an intermediate level. After the tragic death of a Kapelian bird's child, the agony the parent felt transformed into this spirit, a mutated creature with cat-like scales and mild temperament. Another guy called out to Qin, telling him that it was dangerous to be so far up on the ship and questioning how he even climbed up there. Qin apologized. Later, they arrived at the Empire of Light, the Kapper Empire. This empire is known for its expertise in Marat, an elemental power that is used as the main energy source in Kapper. The citizens of this empire believed in light and freedom. However, the urging of this belief and power binds back to a complicated history. 500 years ago, an alliance was formed between the Huawei kingdom and another high-ranking family led by the Kapper family, overthrowing an old tyrannical lineage. Generations passed, and the current emperor of Kapper is Reinhold Kapper. In Emmy's manual, Amy had briefly outlined the basic framework of the country, but now that she was here, her knowledge felt rather vague. They arrived at the royal palace of Kapper. As she exited the carriage, Amy felt a bit nervous. That's when she heard a man shouting her family name. The Viscount Bernard declared, "Return my precious daughter." Baynard then elaborated that his daughter, Penny, had disappeared right after he saw her, which must have been her doing. He accused her of kidnapping and imprisoning his daughter. He wanted her to pay for this. He wanted them all to burn in hell. He activated a magic circle, and with a smile on his face, he struck. A guard told him to stop. Gray stood tall and ready to protect the young lady, but fortunately, her father intervened and easily blocked the attack. He commented that trouble at the palace was quite original and declared that he had offended the wrong person. The Duke pierced the Viscount's hand and ordered the guards to take the Viscount away, while Gray began fixing Amy's clothes as she contemplated whether he were trying to attack her. It seemed that the power of Marat was extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, the Viscount was being taken away by the guards, because everything was going as planned. All that was left to do was wait for the results. In a reception room of the royal palace, the Duke and his daughter sat waiting for His Royal Highness. Although Amy was slightly anxious, she missed the elegance that surrounded her. The Emperor commented that it was the first time the Duke had brought his daughter here and inquired if he could call her Little Emmy. However, she secretly moved closer to her father. The Emperor questioned if she was not going to answer him. She felt immense pressure, realizing that despite his politeness, he projected malicious intentions. She didn't know why, but it felt more dangerous to raise her head and answer him than to risk death itself. She couldn't ignore the Emperor, but how could she? In response, her father suggested that if he wanted to speak to a lady, he should first put away the dart he had in his hand. She hugged her father's hand, believing he was really cool and handsome. The Emperor smiled, declaring that it was true. It was quite discouraging of him. He questioned if the young miss wanted an apology or, even better, did she want to hug him with his broad shoulders? As he did this, he slowly put a finger to her lips, which caught the Duke's attention. His anger burned brightly. He gave the Emperor 1 second to disappear from his daughter's sight. Outside the Imperial Palace reception room, Amy reflected on the situation, realizing it was quite frivolous and trifling. The Emperor was different from the character in her manual. He was supposed to be a gentle beauty. Instead, he came off as very fake, and not only that, his hostility toward her felt incredibly palpable. Gray was getting Amy out of her trance and questioned what they should do next and if she was okay. It took her a few moments to realize that she was in a very unusual position. Following that realization, she immediately became sad. After a few moments of reflection, she understood that Gray wouldn't even comprehend her feelings. This was the loneliness of an author in a different world. Therefore, she decided it was best for them to explore other places. Meanwhile, the Emperor remarked that he initially thought it was a case of souls exchanging, where the body became a literal empty shell. However, upon looking at Amy, he realized that she was still the same person. Outside, Amy had a thought and questioned if Gray could hear what they were saying inside. He began to listen attentively, but Gray commented that the soundproofing inside the Imperial Palace was quite good, meaning he couldn't hear anything. Amy wondered if she had misheard something. Suddenly, she heard a voice declare that she hadn't brought her there to verify her identity. That was when she realized it wasn't an illusion. But if that were the case, what could they possibly be referring to? They discussed how Liliana's prophecy indicated that out of the two, only one child could survive, and the Emperor must have brought Amy there because he wanted to ascertain whether the child had a destined and auspicious end. The Emperor called him a heartless man and questioned whether he was suggesting that he did something to the child. The Emperor declared that the Duke was the only one who cared about a fake with low survivability, insisting that his child should be the only one to survive, not someone like Amy Morwan. Confused, Amy pondered what they meant by that, wondering if they were talking about something related to her. The information in this place was much more than what was detailed in the manual. She called for Gray, but to her shock, she saw something horrifying. At the window was a giant bird that had taken the form of an avian spirit. Amy stepped back, realizing this was a monster that only appeared in the latter half of the manual. Why had it appeared here? The creature glared directly at her, and she was petrified. It immediately broke the glass, rushing at them as Gray activated a shield to protect her. Suddenly, she called out to Gray, begging for help, but in his astonishment, he saw her vanishing into dust and wind. The quieter the night became, the harder it was for the Duke to sleep. The moment he closed his eyes, her image flashed in front of him, a beautiful woman with light skin and gray hair, who embraced him from behind as he played with her hair. He knew it was just his wishful thinking, but at the very least, he could lie to himself and fill the emptiness in his heart. When they first met, they were young and fell in love at first sight. He had told himself many times how much he hated her, or how she had gone far away to a place he couldn't reach, exiling his heart to stay there. He prayed and longed. If the woman in front of him right now were an illusion, could he make it last forever? His love, his beauty, his wife, his Liliana. There was a thin line to love a person. The gate was narrow and the road long. Back to Amy. Despite her pleas for help, she disappeared completely into the wind right before Gray's eyes. The only thing that remained was her necklace, which cracked upon hitting the ground. Amy was being pulled into darkness by an unknown force in a continuous descent. There were so many puzzles left unsolved, but it seemed they no longer mattered. Would she simply die like this, or would she return to her previous life? Disappearing just like this felt rather nice too. In a situation where she thought she was trying everything with no rescuers in sight, she was sure she was going to die. Suddenly, a voice declared, "You won't die here, no matter what." This person looked exactly like Amy, but she declared that she would always watch over her and protect her. So it was best that Amy wake up right now. Amy pondered who this person was. She looked exactly like the villianess she had drawn, but she was so sleepy that she couldn't think straight. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Amy, Amy." It was Penny, who realized that her friend wasn't waking up. Unfortunately, even if she did wake up, it wouldn't make much difference. Meanwhile, on top of a bell tower, Chun declared the Kain position was flaming fire in the southerly position and west in the DUI position. East Dragon Array, the target has been found. Meanwhile, Penny hugged Amy, who was finally waking up. Sadly, the giant bird was preparing to unleash a deadly blast that would end their lives in a matter of seconds. It attacked them with fury, and Penny screamed in horror. Dust covered the area, and they were nowhere to be seen. Then, a silhouette of a young girl appeared. The bird lowered its head, confused, seeing Amy unharmed. Amy questioned, "What is this?" "Another one of those disgusting mixed breeds." As an experimental product, she concluded that all it did was live in immense pain. Thus, she would just give it an early send-off. She told the bird not to thank her too much, with a menacing expression on her face. In an instant, she chained and trapped the bird, keeping it in one place. Penny exclaimed, "Amy, you're amazing." The bird began to struggle, trying to break free, but it could not. With a smile, Amy declared that she would send it off right away, grinning widely. However, she quickly stopped, sensing something amiss. Realizing that someone was coming, she had no choice but to leave for now. Suddenly, she fainted, which shocked Penny. To make matters worse, the restraints on the creature loosened, allowing it to break free and glare at them. Penny cried out, believing that they were doomed. Suddenly, a voice declared that despite it being a transactional matter, it seemed too late. Chin arrived, levitating in the air, and apologized to the beautiful young ladies. Amy slowly opened her eyes and saw Chin before her. Immediately, she noticed the giant creature that had been attacking her. Amy inquired, "What is going on here?" But before Penny could answer, the bird collapsed on the ground, unconscious. Chin asked if she was okay, adding that now wasn't the time for explanations. They needed to search for the exit of this domain. "This big guy will keep healing itself, so it's hard to beat." Amy pondered where the exit was, and that was when she noticed a group of children lying on the ground, unconscious. She attempted to calm herself, needing to figure out the situation. She had been attacked by the Capellian bird, which appeared in the later stages of her manual, and they must have been saved by this child with pink hair. However, they were trapped here and unable to destroy this creature. Suddenly, she realized that this child was Chin Chioi, the female lead of the story. However, Penny interrupted her thoughts and told her that this was not the time to zone out. Even though she was right, she shouted to Chin to attack the creature's eyes first, believing that they should be able to restrict its movement that way. She stood and swung a charm at the creature's eyes, slicing it and causing it to bleed. It fell to the ground immediately. Amy knew there was no time to rest. The creature would awaken once more. She needed to recall what the original story had written. Suddenly, Chin placed one of the charms towards her neck. It was unfamiliar to her, leaving her to wonder how she knew her name. Unfortunately, she couldn't tell her that she was a character from a story she had created. But she noticed the bird was moving again, so she grabbed Chen's hand and declared that now was the time to discuss that this bird was weak in combat, but normal attacks had no effect. It was better to make sure they didn't die there. Amy revealed that she knew the bird originated from Huawei and that it was normally not aggressive. It must have transformed after consuming the Marat with dark elements. When Chin heard this, he realized they should use Marat with light elements to counter it. Unfortunately, their biggest problem was that none of them had the power of light. To her horror, before them lay a dead end filled with unconscious children. The creature appeared behind them, filling them with dread. Chin resolutely declared that his only rule was to destroy it again and again. Every time it got up, he would knock it back down. When Amy heard this, she thought Chin was really handsome, but he was still just a silly kid. This tactic would only drain his energy. It wouldn't help them at all. Suddenly, the creature was attacked from above. It was the knight of the Duke of her estate, Gray, who had come to rescue her. Upon his arrival, her legs went soft as she finally believed that she was saved. He towered over the creature in a cool pose, removing his gloves and grumbling that this was annoying. He activated a magic circle around the creature, but this was no ordinary circle. It combined Kapper's swordsmanship and Huayue's magical techniques. The boy was truly impressive. As he approached Amy, he apologized for being late and placed her gem in her hand. Amy questioned what it was, as it exuded a strange energy. Gray commented that there were some things only Lady Amy could do, but Amy didn't understand. Gray sensed she could hear his voice, but Chun misunderstood, believing he was just talking nonsense. In an instant, Amy heard a voice cry out, "Mother." Gray commented that it looked like she could hear it. They couldn't hear the voice, but it seemed she was pretending she could. However, when the creature heard the voice, it was surprised. The gem shouted, "Help! Save me, Mommy." Amy felt uncomfortable hearing the voice, but she declared, "If you don't mind, please tell me what happened." The voice explained that neither the Capellian green gem nor its true form was theirs. It was all because of those foreign people who had turned them into the inhuman things they were now. A few months ago, in the kingdom of Huawei, she had been with her loving mother, whom she adored dearly. Her mother had told her to wait for a moment. She would return soon. Looking back at her mother as she left, she waved goodbye, never imagining it would be the last time she would see her. From behind her, two strangers in black approached her and told her that her mother was looking for her. One man declared that there was no need for all this nonsense and just ordered to take her away. He activated a black magic circle, and before she could comprehend her situation, it was as if she were placed in a trance. Her eyes became blank. When a strange and dangerous man raised his hand, she couldn't move or do anything but allow herself to be taken away by them. She was terrified. Despite all her inner cries for help, no one could save her. She looked back, wanting her mother to come and rescue her, but her mother was nowhere to be found. When her mother finally arrived, she was frantic. Where was her daughter? Tears streamed down her face. She felt lost. Upon realizing her child had disappeared, her mother's obsession manifested as a bird with a cat tail, a Capellian bird. After a child meets a tragic end, a parent's obsessive despair manifests as a bird. She searched frantically, unable to find her child. That was exactly what those people wanted. They captured her gentle mother and injected her with a strange substance. The substance caused her to grow larger and stronger. The person who had done this ordered her to go search for her child and become a weapon. The girl apologized to them, explaining that her mother only wanted to find her. Amy declared that even though there was a reason for it, her mother should never have involved innocence in such a sinister situation. This thought made her mad, and she declared that her mother would never have done something like that. Originally, her mother and she had only ended up this way because of those strange men. Losing control, her mother screeched in rage. The Capellian bird was unstable, and there would be no end to her increasingly intense attacks. What was the point of knowing her identity without light attribute Marat users? They had no way to escape from this place. The mother didn't care about herself. If she died here, she might have a chance to return to her original world. But what about the others? Suddenly, a voice questioned, "Do you need help, darling? You have two options. Would you like to purify her or destroy her?" This person made a dramatic entrance. Suddenly, the gem began emanating dark smoke, and from it, the girl shouted, "I won't let you bully my mother." Just like that, she was released from the gem and tried to get close to her mother. The person ordered Gray to attack, then apologized in advance for his actions. He held Amy's hand and told her to face forward. Then someone declared, "God, enlighten me. As I make a request in prayer to God, look upon the sorrow in my eyes, and with your loving tenderness, purify the spirits of this world." This was nothing less than the purest form of Marat. The other was used in the purest form of the dark attribute. With that, they could actually form a perfect purification array. Suddenly, below, Penny created a shield for the spirits of the children. Someone questioned why a monster could be purified. They want everyone to die along with them. These are only malicious child spirits. They cannot be allowed to get in. So Chen began helping Penny to push them back. Penny really hoped that the purification can go a bit faster. "We can't hold on for much longer," the person who had arrived told them not to rush. "I'm beginning the purification." In an instant, the monstrous bird became human once more, holding her daughter as tears welled in her eyes. Since the ordeal was over, they released the spirits of the children. However, the purification circle was still in effect. All passed through it, and strangely, their forms disappeared along with their childhood. This seemed like the end of everything, or at least that's what one would think. Amy began coughing up blood. Penny urged Gray to hurry and take her out of that place. Her body wouldn't be able to take it if she stayed there for too long. Amy, with a worried expression, inquired if they were not leaving together. Penny declared that she could no longer leave. Her life was now underground. She said that she could not join them and that she belonged with them now. She had enjoyed spending time with Amy, and it was a shame that they couldn't be friends in the end. Meanwhile, at the aristocratic prison, someone commented that no one could have expected it. The foolish Viscount had offended someone of a higher rank upon losing his beloved daughter, who would now be considered a traitor. The man took out his magic ball to see what stage his plan was in. From the moment Penny was captured by the experiment, most of his charges had cleared. The plan was continuously gushing out like a tide. The magnificent trap was ready and in place. He believed that the foolish commodities were so easy to use. First, under the guise of wanting to attack the lady because of his love for his daughter, he had been able to attract the experiment by pouring dark attribute Marat onto the lady's person. After that, things were simple. The discussion between the Emperor and the Duke was definitely about that person, so all the guards in the corridor of the drawing room were temporarily dismissed. After all, those great men always regarded the palace as the safest place on earth. After that, the weak and frail lady was captured by a monster from a foreign country in the blink of an eye. If she was the thing they were looking for, everything would be perfect. But what if she wasn't? He could only take pity on his adorable Penny. They could join each other in hell, he thought. A mysterious man appeared in the crystal ball and declared that it did not matter as long as the plan could succeed. The mysterious man declared, "Foolish commodities? How distasteful. Even if she wraps herself tightly, as long as she is near Amy, her vitality will continue to drain." Gray appreciated her willingness to help. In the next scene, we see her returning to her original appearance. It was really noisy as she heard someone calling her name, Miss Quinlan. She knew that someone was talking to her. She covered her ears because she didn't want to be called that name. It wasn't hers. Suddenly, she truly awoke, and when she heard Amy, fear was clear on her face as she gripped her sheets, tears streaming down her cheeks. After a few moments, she got up and saw the maid sleeping in her chair. Suddenly, the maid slowly opened her eyes when the bird began chirping. That was when she saw Amy approaching her. The maid cried, "My lady," and yelled, "Dion, our lady is awake. Come and see." It turned out that after that day, Amy laid unconscious for a week. Chen had already returned to her kingdom, and Gray had gone on vacation to rest. Dion had to remove the dark attribute Marat that lingered within her body. All she needed to do now was rest. Elite questioned if she felt unwell anywhere, but she avoided his gaze and simply mumbled that she wasn't used to this. In order to take care of her, everyone was exhausted. These emotions directed at her felt like warmth within her reach. It was difficult to grow accustomed to. What about Penny? She wondered but didn't dare ask about her at all, even though the dream felt useless and she wanted to run away from reality. The pain in her heart was evident, and Ellie shouted out her name without warning, drawing everyone's attention. He nervously suggested that they bring her out for the next few days to relax. Their cousin had just shown up, so they could reminisce. In the next scene, a person questioned Chin about how the mission had gone. He declared that he was currently bringing the target back to Huawei, but had to inform her that they almost got caught up in a big conspiracy. She suggested sending an envoy. In simple terms, they had been framed. It was a monster from their country that prosecuted many of the Empire's citizens. If it hadn't been discovered that a third party was involved, what do you think would have happened? The people involved were nobles, high-ranking nobles, even from the royal family. It could have become a diplomatic issue. Suddenly, she accidentally bumped into a guy. He had blonde hair, purple eyes, and the emblem of the Empire. He questioned if she was hurt, but she quickly realized that he was the Prince of the Empire.